Ulf Loven, a Swedish painter who spent half my life in America. So I guess I'm half American, half Swedish. Oh, I always painted since I can remember. My father was a great storyteller, so I painted all his stories before I started school. When I was about 10, we started in junior high. The teacher, he was talking about abstract art and how you can get your inspiration from botany, you know. So I was sitting and doing caricatures, basically, very freely. And then suddenly he just stopped and said, "This is what I'm talking about," and held up my work. So suddenly I was being lionized as a painter, and it was a blessing for me because I was exposed to all the expressionists and the impressionists. Nature has always been an inspiration for me. Then simple things that derives from still lives. Portrait, which I love doing, more or less realistically, nudes. These are my inspiration. These are very classical subject matters, but I distort them. I don't do that much directly from old artists, but I certainly appreciate what Braque and Picasso did, how they changed painting history. I have painted in many different directions because I consider life is rather short, and it would be foolish to deny myself to have different styles. There's a lot of pleasure involved in doing portraits or flowers. I like to start out with perhaps a perfectly banal subject matter and then hide it so that the painting also reads as a perfectly abstract painting. I do not really do hard edge. I like to show the brushwork on my hand. It's always my own. You can see my own personality in it, It doesn't resemble anybody else's really. The crux for me is not to make it naturalistic or too realistic, but more like it has a sign or an image that reads if the viewer look carefully. I see a correlationship between painting and music, definitely. What is in common, I think, in music and painting is that the mind very quickly reads the simple rhythms, 1, 2, 3, Take a genius like Mozart who can take a little ditty like dee-dee-da-da-bum and then suddenly turn it into a masterpiece. But the theme is always very simple, maybe 4 or 5 or even 3 notes or beats. It's the variations where the genius come in, That goes for painting too. You try to start with some very simple, maybe 3 different colors or 3 different tones and then bring in some kind of drama or happening or a narrative, if you want, Most of us avoid, if we try to do modern painting, the horizon. You can get cubistic space, all kinds of different genres. If you have a blank canvas and draw a line right across it, the eye sees the line, but if you look 2 minutes more or 2 seconds more, you see a land and atmosphere. It becomes something that reads like a horizon, and then the painter is kind of stuck with what we call naturalistic space, and it has a tendency to creep in a rendering of perspective. No matter how you try to avoid it, you want a kind of different space in your painting. In your own way, the way you have to have your own vision about how you see it. And I had one teacher once, Hovannes, was in sculpture, who came in and he says, "You just got to stop sometimes and think." It's talking about just crossing a bridge. You can see it from a distance in a flash. You can see it as crossing it in motion if you're a filmmaker. You can get all kinds of different views on it. And a cubist, of course, did multiple views from different vantage points, that's still a good advice. You can confuse to get away from any kind of sense of perspective, which can be kind of deadening, I think. In the violin paintings, particularly, I would say, try to throw away any kind of sense of perspective and get many vantage points in a painting. I also make the instrument broken. I show some of the F holes, but the violin itself is just the outline of it, and it's transparent, you know, because I like certain forms, and it's very pleasant to paint, this kind of bulging shapes. So they kind of float around in a rather confusing way, which I think is just poetic or rhythmic. Then the background has to be very simple. It's again, I just want to 1, 2, 3, 4 at the most. Some very simple emotive color fields, really. Again, I avoid to do hard edge. They are basically muted into each other. So it's a little narrative which I want to be intriguing, but certainly not concrete, that someone can come up with a definition exactly what it is. I want to mystify a little bit without being an obscurant, you know.